Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Metaphysical Egypt. This is episode 36. Alan Peoples here with Patricia Awion-Lehman. Hi, Patricia.
Hi, Alan.
Cataclysm.
You guys knew we were leading up to this. We've been talking about it loosely for quite some time. But what is cataclysm? What does this actually mean? You know, what have we been talking about? Now we're going to start to go a little bit deeper, well, actually a lot deeper, into all the possibilities of what's coming and how it's coming. What did the ancients tell us? We've told you a lot about what the ancients, especially of Egypt, have put forward about these cycles and cycles within cycles. But now we're going to talk about what our physicists are talking about and what's happening, in our universe, in our galaxy mostly. So yeah, let's just get started. And of course, I'm always going to interject some images from Egypt. And this is a beautiful one from the ceiling, the first Metaphyscial hall at Dendera. And it's one of the four corners, basically, of the the Milky Way, or the sky, basically. And it's a nettard, again, a force of nature, what we mistakenly call goddesses, but it's a force of nature named or called Fate, who represented the West, supporting the sky in a depiction from the ceiling, which I said, but the symbol of the winged scarab always represents this dawning of a new day cycle. We've come out of a night cycle, it's the dawning of a new day cycle, and it's the nettard of the West. Interesting. We've been talking about the possibility that everything will reverse. Our sun will begin to rise in the West, and this is what the winged scarab represents. Even on that Metaphyscial hall, you see Newt gives birth, in the age of Leo, moving into Virgo, but she gives birth to a winged scarab, representing the dawning of a new day cycle. So lots of interesting symbolism to back up a lot of what we believe could be happening. Cataclysm. And this is an image that's kind of portraying, some of what Plato was talking about. And about 9,000 years before the time of Plato, so basically 12,500 years, this is the number everyone's talking about, considering our last cataclysm, 12,500 years ago. And the Younger Dryas, and all the different, the solar flares, things like this. This is the date everyone's talking about, and maybe we're even overdue for this impending event that everyone is discussing these days. We feel change. We all feel something's going on. So he says the people of Atlantis, this higher, this people who had a higher state of consciousness became corrupt and greedy. Sound familiar? Afterwards, there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune, all of the warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis, in a like manner, disappeared into the depths of the sea. And this is from Plato, as told to Socrates by Critias, with the approval of Timaeus in the dialogues of Plato. And the story, of course, came from Solon, who had lived many years before, who had acquired the story from the priests while in Egypt. So many of us are familiar with this story, and, we've talked about Plato and some of the things he said. He talked about a reversal, and that everything basically spins in the opposite direction. He had so many clues, and he got his information out of Egypt. And at some point, we're going to talk about, we're going to go into depth about the temples. And when we talk about Edfu, this everything that Plato talked about is basically covered in an interesting way in the building texts. So there's just so many ways we can look at this information. And I always think of, Stephen Mailer. I went on my first tour of Egypt. I came to meet Abdel Hakim Alian, and Stephen was leading or hosting the tour, and he had written a couple of books with Abdel Hakim and Alian. But he always used to talk about, and Hakim knew Barbara Hand Clow very well, and she actually hosted many tours with him over the years. And she wrote this book called Catastrophobia. And I just want to read from the book description on Amazon. Basically, Catastrophobia reveals the insidious global forces that have used these collective fears of an impending cataclysm, to control humanity for thousands of years. But we are in the midst of a tremendous shift in Earth's 26,000-year precessional cycle. And there is every indication that the changes in consciousness over the last 30 years are the beginnings of a collective healing from these deep fears, heralding a new age where we will see that the era of cataclysms is ending and a time of extraordinary creative activity is at hand. So she's offering another opinion that, maybe this is the great awakening of a brand new age. And, in the last episode, we talked about consciousness and the intelligence of energy. Basically that, waveform, watery waveform, plasma, all these different forms of water are intelligent. And so if we were able to harness that understanding of how to move with everything that we perceive in this reality as being conscious and interact in a positive, wonderful way, if we were to transform ourselves, then we would transform our environment in one great yogic breath. And all these things I'm talking about, if you're not familiar with the precessional cycle, we've given descriptions of it in several of our different episodes. And please look it up, but we don't want to take that time to keep explaining things that we've already talked about. So let's move on. And this is some wonderful things and thoughts from Rudolf Steiner. And he says, I ask, are they all these, ideas of cataclysm in the dogma, stories, and mythologies, are they a metaphor given to us so that we can remember how powerful we truly are as light beings? Maybe, maybe this is what the ancients were talking about. So in The Mystery of the Future, Rudolf Steiner says, if in times to come, when the etheric body has again loosened itself from the physical, if man is to live his life in any real sense, he must have consciousness of what will then present itself to the etheric body. In order that he may be conscious that what then comes to him is knowledge of the spiritual world. It is essential that realization of the existence of the spiritual world shall be preserved in humanity and carried through the period when man is most deeply immersed in the material world. Well, that would be right now. For the sake of the future, the link between the religious life and the life of knowledge must never be lost. Man came forth from a life among the gods. To a life among the gods he will again return. Interesting. These are the cycles we've been talking about. We were once the gods that walked the earth. We were the ones that had this highest, 360 senses, according to Hakim. And we devolved into this state. We fell into form. Plato's cave, right? We've talked about Plato's cave. So he goes on to say, but he must be able to recognize them. He must know that in very truth, the gods are realities. When the etheric body has loosened, he will no longer be able to rely on remembrances of ancient human times. If meanwhile he has lost consciousness of the spiritual world, he has come to believe that life in the physical body and things to be seen in the physical world are the only realities, then for all ages of time he must dangle, as it were, in midair. This is interesting. He will then have lost his bearings in the spiritual world and will have no ground under his feet. He will be threatened in this condition with what is known as the spiritual death. For around him there is only fantasy, illusion, and a world of whose reality he has no consciousness. in which he does not believe, and so he dies. Now think this through. We are immersed in this material world, this cave where we think the images before us are real, but they're just reflections of light on this net, this cave, the walls of our cave. And this illustration is from, what is it called? The school, something school. I'll put that in the description. But they did a wonderful presentation on Plato's cave, and they talk about, if someone possibly escapes from the cave and is able to go up above ground, they speak about this, that they're totally, everything they experience is incomprehensible to them. They had never had a clue that there was this other way to live. And if you understand this, and they left this in their mythologies worldwide, and their dogma, as I said, and all these, they're telling us about this, that there is a night cycle and a day cycle. There is a cycle where we're immersed in form and we're held hostage by the belief that we are our bodies. And then we escape and we live in a day cycle where we are, at one, unity consciousness, right brain consciousness. We feel everyone. We know that we are connected to everything and everyone in the universe. And I think this is why a lot of this knowledge is coming forward and people are teaching these things. It's not just me talking about this. We've talked about Dr. Ibrahim Karim and so many others. And what Rudolf Steiner is telling us is we need to go deeper. We can't afford to be lazy any longer. We need to know and understand what this event is all about, because so many today agree that it's coming closer and closer. And we're going to talk about that, in the next, probably today and in the next couple episodes, how close it actually is. So this would be the time, Hakeem said it many times, you wake up. This is the time to remember who you are. So he goes on to say that that is the death in the spiritual world. If you can't comprehend, if you don't know what's happening, and you basically, like Lot's wife, you basically, maybe turn into a pillar of salt, right? It is the doom which threatens men if, before passing again into the spiritual worlds, they fail to bring with them any consciousness of those worlds. At what point in the evolution of humanity was attainment of consciousness of the spiritual world made possible for man? It was at the point where man's descent into the physical body was countered by a victory over that body. And there was placed before men the great prototype of Christ himself. The understanding of Christ forms for man the bridge between the memories of his ancient past and the foreshadowings of his future. Now he says Christ. We've heard about Christ consciousness. In ancient Egypt, it was Horus. It's symbolic worldwide of the images you see of all different forms with the hawk head or eagle head or some sort of bird head. That represented this higher consciousness, Christ consciousness. And his victory over death, when it is rightly understood, reveals to man what the manner of his own life must be. For all ages of time, he is to be conscious of the reality of the spiritual world. That is the true union with Christ. We need to remember now. What will the Christ mystery, the Christ deed, come to mean in the life of man in the future? As he ascends again into the spiritual world, man will know that through the Christ deed, he has gained the victory over what he experienced in the physical body. He will point to the physical as something that has been overcome and surmounted. We should feel the Easter miracle then. Resurrection, we've talked about that in many episodes. Resurrection, the Easter miracle, as a mighty deed, a foreshadowing of the future. The other is that man will look back upon what was experienced in the physical world and will know that it is a grave. Like Hakeem used to say, womb tomb. We literally were born from a womb into the tomb, Plato's cave. Then without deep consciousness, with deep consciousness of the import of his words, he will say to those who still believe in the physical to have been the one and the only reality, he whom thou seekest is no longer here. The grave is empty, and he who lay within it has risen. The empty grave and the risen Christ. This is the Easter mystery, the mystery that is a foreshadowing, a prophecy. Those resurrection stories, the resurrection, of Christ, of Jesus, was, we talked about the resurrection story of Osiris, and these resurrection stories are worldwide. And there is a reason for that. This is a common memory, a common knowing. This is what Barbara Hand Cloud talked about. We, in Catastrophobia, we all have a memory of these events. It's within our DNA. And this is the time not to hide our heads in the sand, but to actually understand, embrace, and begin to disembody, if you will, or embody this knowledge and then disembody, but to realize what resurrection actually means. Because when we talk about catastrophe in all its many forms, people are talking about comets or solar flares and micronovas, and we're going to talk about all those things, but it always seems to bring up fear. And that fear grips us, and then we go to the soccer game or we put on a movie or we don't want to face it. But maybe if we really understood and can embrace the fact that we are not our bodies. Remember, this is what holds us hostage. That is the great resurrection. That is the Aquarius emptying the waters, right? The energy from its container. This is so important in this moment. How are we going to walk through these moments in peace amidst the chaos? Nobody said this would be easy. This is an attitude that is very widespread in our time, also from Rudolf Steiner. A dislike is taken to someone the moment he speaks about things that are uncomfortable, albeit necessary. One feels let down because he fails to uplift. See, Alan, we're in danger now. We're going into waters that no one wants to talk about. But truth, which has been recognized as such, stands higher than words spoken merely because they deal with things that are pleasant and can be taken home to be enjoyed like a comforting beverage. Sorry, guys. The satisfaction derived from knowledge of life as it necessarily and truly is stands higher than that derived from ease and comfort. So, yeah, nobody said it would be easy, but maybe it'll be easier than we think if we actually give it some time and thought, that we meditate on these possibilities and ideas. I think this is the time of great awakening to who we really are. And we have to do it before the event. So there's the catch. Are you ready to see just how deep the rabbit hole goes? So yeah, some people aren't ready to leave the cave, but this is a challenge. This is a challenge to actually poke your nose out and begin to see the light. That sounds so corny. And we talked about this. The rabbit hole is the center of the torus field. Mm-hmm. Are you ready to jump in? That's Alice jumping in the rabbit hole. And when she does, she goes into a place of basically no time and space. Things get bigger or smaller, dependent on her thoughts, right? Our thoughts will make all the difference in the world. We are communicating with the environment around us. We've talked about it in the last 2 episodes. How powerful are we? We can heal ourselves, and we just forgot how. And I saw this illustration. I couldn't find the artist on the left. And that reminded me, I had an experience after my second trip to Egypt. I had flown Egypt Air through New York, and I was living in Albuquerque at the time. So I stayed at a hotel once I hit New York on my way home. And that night I had this incredible, weird astral experience. And I literally, went through this rabbit hole, this wormhole, and it was basically, I was led by Horus. Of course, I had just come from Egypt, and it was in from the pineal gland. And I woke up with all this, real. I was awake. It was this strange thing. I was awake. It was astral, but I had all these visions, and I saw all these things, and I'm led into this wonderful portal, and this knowing that this, we have the womb that gives birth to form, right? But we have this womb in our basically, we envision it in our heads, but it's that third eye. It's that ability when we transmute our polarity, we have the ability to jump in the rabbit hole, and where we can change everything, in any big, great yogic breath.
And by transmuting your polarity, you're talking about balancing the hemispheres of the brain so that you're neither right brain nor left brain dominant, but both are acting in harmony at the same time, correct?
Absolutely. Marrying your positive and negative charge, your masculine and feminine, your two hemispheres of the brain. Exactly. And this was talked about. Obviously, this was sought after in ancient Egypt, and we've shown you the pictures so many times of the cobra that zigzags across the between the two hemispheres of the brain. This is the key, and they left us all this knowing within the symbolism and mythology, so that we do know how to walk through these moments. And I'm reminding everyone of this because what we're about to go into and delve into may seem scary, but it's not if we do the work. And the work doesn't mean anything heavy duty. It means doing the meditation, immersing yourself, in finding things that resonate with you, that can get you to that understanding that we are not our bodies. And there's so many modalities, so many wonderful teachers in the world. You don't need a teacher. You can find it. We're going to do some podcasts even on healing and how we get to those points. But this is the time. This is the time we look into it. This is the time we spend time as we perceive it, figuring these things out. So if you look up the word apocalypse, you'll find that the Greek word apocalypse actually means to uncover, reveal, or unveil the truth that has been ignored, forgotten, misinterpreted, and misunderstood. And the phrase apocalypsis, Shatan, help me out, Alan, literally means revelation at the end of the eon or age. Well, we are at the end of an eon or age. And so apocalypse is a great revelation. If, your mission, if you choose to accept it. And I just love this. This is a symbol that Hakim used for the age of Aten, that high stage of consciousness. And he's in the box, that this is the place of, and it's the old man using the cane. And it's basically, it represents not only the older stage of a human life, but the older stage. Remember we talked about the Hebsed festivals being celebrated after 30 years of rulership, and 30 years, as I mentioned in the last podcast, is related to the cycles of the moon. As told to me by Ksenia Moore. When we were discussing it, she had that thought, and it made perfect sense to me. The moon waxing and waning into fullness, that's that moment that everything changes, cycles that are embedded in every aspect of our life. But this particular glyph is a representation of a stage in a person's life called where. This man is the great where. He is the greatest, the teacher of the star knowledge, the seer of the time-space continuum, the elder of wisdom, greatest of the greatest, great of wisdom. Stephen Mailer used to call Hakim the great where, and I couldn't agree more. But this is what we all need to begin to remember the where within us. We all are the where. We just need to dust ourselves off, get the sleep out of our eyes and remember who we are. So let's get started. Cataclysm. So I've talked a little bit about Ben Davidson. Allan and I watch his podcasts, not religiously, but when we can. I found Ben Davidson, who is an astrophysicist, when I started seeing these things, this knowing on in the Temple of Dendera, in the mythologies, in all my research of Egypt, I started to see all of these things and these cycles, and it had something to do with the sun. And I had I had these notebooks that I would just fill with diagrams, and I'd be drawing crazy. I was just all these things were coming in, and I would begin to see these cycles, and I was catching how it all worked. And so I started Googling, like I do. I just go and do the research, and I found Suspicious Observers and the work of Ben Davidson. He also has Space Weather News, and he's creating Observer Ranch, where people are actually buying property to prepare for a possible cataclysm. One of his favorite sayings for years and years, every time he started a podcast, he'd say, "No fear." And it's a good reminder, because we're not about spreading fear. We're about seeing the cycles, seeing what's there. And so we can learn how to navigate them in the best possible way. And not to just give up and say, a cataclysm means, wow, since we're a material world, it's, if we have a great, if the comet hits us, if a super volcano, that means we're dead. Well, that's if you believe you are your body. So I'm not going to say that again. We're going to delve into this, and we'll get back to how we walk through it. But he says, yes, the climate is changing, but we are still getting record cold and snow every winter. And Venus's winds are getting faster, and Mars' climate is shifting more extremely than ours. Jupiter's long-lasting features are changing, while storm anomalies on Saturn are unprecedented. And these things are still happening. Every planet in our solar system is going through huge changes. Reversals in the way the storms revolve. So many things are happening. If you're paying attention, you won't find this on major news channels. Every once in a while, you'll hear a few things, but you're not going to hear a lot of this. And I'm not suggesting everybody go look up Ben Davidson. If you are called to do so, definitely, he's got amazing information. I don't embrace everything he says, but he does the work. He does look up the white papers. He's always in tune with what everyone out there, what NASA and all the different astrophysicists and scientists are finding. He's checking those numbers. He's not just coming up with his own theories, and that's what I like about him. I'm looking at the information, not the personality. He has brought forward more information than anyone else I know. Don't you agree, Allan?
Yeah, I would say so.
So yeah, Uranus is having record storms and aurora. Neptune's well-known storm patterns reversed. I wrote that wrong. And Pluto lost a fifth of its atmosphere in less than 2 years. This is really bizarre stuff. This doesn't happen every day. And ions and dust and neutrals are on the rise in the interplanetary space of the solar system, while the sun's coronal chemistry is changing along with its magnetic fields.
And these climate changes on other planets are obviously not caused by humans.
Well, obviously, they tell us most of these planets, if not all of them, the human life couldn't survive. Many believe that on Mars we did at one time. And it's possible that, if we re-engineer the environments, we could exist on possibly in some way. I don't think we'd be out looking for another Earth if that were truly possible. But so no, there might be forms of life, but as far as we know, no human life. And we're about to get into what could be causing this and what I believe actually is happening. So he goes on to say an Earth's magnetic field is weakening. And we have talked about this, and this is huge. This is our planet, and this is our environment. And the magnetic poles are shifting, and cosmic rays are bombarding our brains at record levels while our internal magnetic bearings are shifting. The worst part is that this is intimately related to what we are seeing in the economy, culture, politics, and lunacy of the world today. And it is exactly what was predicted in no less than 6 religious texts and some thousands of years old. I've definitely seen it in Egypt. It is a pole reversal of the entire solar system, and many people are already flipping. Do you have what it takes to resist the flip and survive what's about to happen? Do you even know what it takes? What if I told you several cultures not only predicted this, but knew what it would take and managed to leave behind the evidence to tell us what would happen to the Earth, the sun, and the people? This is what being a suspicious observer is. This is why over 200 professors, NASA, ESA, and USGS scientists are observers, and why they're observers in the House of Representatives, the Pentagon, and who are called General, Admiral, and Colonel. He's got a lot of fans. It's not going to happen tomorrow. And he's beginning to shift on that, by the way. He just said yesterday that he sees it could happen within the next few months to 2 years. Things are ramping up quickly. But we'll save that for the next podcast. But the preparation for this takes years, and we must have a head start on all of you. We are willing to help, but by the time it's obvious and everyone knows, it's too late. We don't want to wait. I put this up here. People have different opinions about it, but a lot of you don't even know it exists. It's called the Adam and Eve story, and it's a declassified CIA document where they talk about just this. And a lot of the information was redacted, but what's available, Ben has some a few podcasts speaking about this. He has a long one where you can actually see. He does a good job of presenting the information with pictures and videos. But you can see what this is all about. Again, CIA document that describes all of these things that I'm about to talk about in different ways. So Ben pointed out, what I found at Dendera is I could tell by the way it was presented, and I do show this to people on anyone that I take to Luxor. We go to Dendera. Allan and I have spent we've gone
a long time.
Yes, you put them all together, and I think we've spent months in that temple. But yes, it shows that literally about every 12,000 years there is a major geomagnetic shift, pole shift. And he's done the research, and he's basically outlined all of them. 12,000 years was the Gothenburg, 24,000 years ago, Lake Mungo, 35,000. Again, these are give or take. Mono Lake, before that, Les Champs, Vostok, Greenland, Toba, all of these every 12,000 years. In the last 25 years, the Earth's poles have moved more than they have in the last thousands of years. So does that tell you something? I had a video and I took it down. It was 5 minutes and it went through some of these things. And I do encourage you to go. He has he keeps an archive of all the things he's ever done. I encourage you to check out some of those longer videos just to get an idea of the amount of work and research that went into what he's doing. There are people that say he's not, he doesn't know what he's talking about, but I believe there's agendas out there to prevent us from knowing this, that they don't think we are capable of knowing, that we wouldn't know how to handle this knowledge. But the problem is when this starts happening, it's going to come with, we're going to have a few super flares. We're going to have a few events that could turn our world around. And if we're not ready, how do we deal with that? We're being told by our governments. In the UK, they were told by, I think, the assistant prime minister to start stocking up on food. Different people and organizations have been telling the USA this, and I'm talking political. And in different countries in the world, we are being encouraged to prepare. And I know I used to make the flippant comments like, "Oh, here we go, another end of the world date or story." And it is kind of comical how many times we've been told. But I think part of that makes us lazy, and we stop really looking into what's happening in our environment and in our galaxy today. Um, and
Do you
it's
think the 2012 PSYOP end of the world Mayan calendar thing was possibly a distraction?
I think I actually think the dates. I think the dating that they came up with probably was a little faulty. And even if it wasn't, there are those that believe that was the beginning, because these things, like the magnetic field weakening, that started 160 years ago. And it started out slow and, pretty steady. I mean, up until the beginning of this century, like in 2000, whatever, four or something, 2006, it was pretty steady at maybe, a certain percentage per year, until it got to about 15 to 20%, 15, I think 15%. And then it went exponential and it started speeding up. And now he tells us we're at the inflection point. 2023 was the turning point where it's going to dip in a heartbeat. And we are now at 30% of what we had 160 years ago. Now, take a moment to digest.
30% of what we had, or 30% less of what we had?
30%. Well, yeah, I meant, yeah, 30% less. Thank you.
Okay.
But take a moment to digest that. This magnetic field, the wings of Isis, as I pointed out many times, is what protects us. Isis and Nebhet, her sister, protect Osiris with their wings. But those wings are also the veil of forgetfulness. They're the net. They're the Plato's cave. So we fall through this veil. We forget who we are. We start to believe we are our bodies. And now the veil's falling. So this marks two huge things, and we're going to talk about it. But it marks the beginning of enlightenment, right? All the radiation from the galaxy is coming in at increasing levels. And we're feeling it in our bodies. We're feeling it. It's creating dis-ease of the mental, physical, spiritual bodies. These are things we need to learn how to deal with. We need to be conscious of the frequencies we feed ourselves and how to work with them. That's why I talk about biogeometry, because he's giving us tools for how to deal with radiation and other things in our environment. So, when he says it's a modality for the future, he's not kidding. This is big, what I'm talking about.
Right. It's a kind of sink or swim situation. This radiation is not going anywhere. We either need to adapt to it or perish.
Well, that's it. We either, nobody wants to face these things, but I still believe we all lined up to be here now. We all wanted to be here, and we had this feeling, we were like the fool in a tarot deck. Yeah, I want to do this. This is great. The big, huge awakening. But we didn't realize we were going to lose the knowledge of how powerful we really are. And we'd have to relearn it before the event happened.
Well, thankfully, ancient cultures put it all there for us to see.
Well, exactly.
Carved in stone to last forever.
Well, this is it. And, I know this is why you and I are both so passionate about what we're doing and talking about it. It's not our favorite thing to be bringing news like this, to the people that are listening to us. But on the other hand, these are things you and I talk about every day. what things we can be doing, what new health things can we're so aware of what's available to us, and to try and make informed choices. And it's not easy. In a way, it's sort of become our passion. um, and it makes a difference. I'm feeling so much more at peace. The more I learn, the more at peace I feel about it. There is a sense of urgency. Where should I be living? Where should and then you remember again what the ancients told us. Yes, awareness is everything. We do what we can. Depending on who you are, what your expertise is. It's a time to come together and plan. But let's just continue. So this is comes from Rory Duff. We've talked about Rory Duff before. He's from the UK. He really knows earth currents better than anyone I've come across. And there are a lot of experts out there, and I don't want to take away from any of them. But Rory's special. So he talks about a special light from the sun, and the ancients in Egypt, at Edfu, they talk about it, and in cultures all over the world, we will hear something similar to this. And he says, we find reference to a special light from the sun that will come as we near the final evolution of consciousness. That's where we are. In the first, it was said that one of the gods of the Inca, Manco Capac, stepped into this world assisted by a very special ray of light. Shortly afterwards, his brothers and sisters arrived, again assisted by a special ray of light from the sun. They became known as the illuminated ones. In the second, a Japanese prophecy, it is said that when the goddess comes out of the cave again, a special light will return to the world, and the darkest age of humanity will end with the dawning of a new divine light. Now, that all sounds promising.
Sounds like Ibrahim.
Yes, exactly. Wow. That was what, three or four podcasts ago? Good memory. Yeah, a beam from the what is it? A beam of a ray.
Heart of the sun.
From the heart of the sun, exactly. Thank you. So Ben talks about micronova, and I've done a lot of studying since he first brought this up. And we can talk about comets, we can talk about micronova, we can talk about super flares. My feeling is if the wings of Isis are coming down, and this is what ancient Egypt speaks about. The wings come up, the wings come down, the protection goes, and they do talk about it being cyclical. And they do talk about the ray of light coming from the sun as a great serpent. So that that can be a metaphor for many different things. But as the magnetic field weakens, we become more vulnerable to comets. We become more vulnerable to any flare. We're finding out right now. We're seeing aurora borealis in southern states, Arizona. I mean, I can remember, and I've told this story before, it was in the late 1960s, and I was in grade school. I went out to feed the dogs. I lived in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and I looked up, and I literally saw all these beautiful colors, and I thought the world was coming to an end, and I ran into the house. Well, of course, when you look up and you're supposed to see the stars like you do every day. And it was beautiful, but that was just bizarre. And my dad came out and assured me that everything was fine and that we were looking at an aurora borealis. And my dad just seemed to know everything about everything. So it was a unique event. And I remember looking it up just a couple of years ago, and they had the date that it was a very rare, unique event that we could see it in Pennsylvania at that time. Now it's happening all the time. Just the last year or so, it's been happening all the time. These are things Ben points out. So these are the little things that we tend to just skip over and forget about. But it's big. This is big. And we need to be aware. We need to open our senses and be aware of what's happening. Um, so he says the age we live in is coming to an end. In the near future, we most likely will be facing challenges that were foretold to us by the ancients within their symbolism and mythologies. The day the sun stood still, and I've talked about this many times through these episodes, this is what the Egyptians spoke about, the moment of silence. And civilization is sent back to the Stone Age. It's happened before and may be about to happen once again.
And when would the sun stand still? Only when movement on Earth stops.
Well, when I envision it, when I was in all my notebooks and I knew that the wings came down, I immediately knew that, when the wings come down, we stop spinning. So, the CIA report talks about the moment that they actually say that the people in South Africa see the sun stop and it doesn't move. Different cultures, different mythologies have said the same thing, that all of a sudden the sun doesn't move, it stays in the sky. Now, of course, only one side of the planet will see that, because one side will be enjoying night and the other side will be enjoying day. So if the Earth stops spinning, it's going to be always day for whatever amount of time, always night if you're on the other side. So, when I first read it, I thought, oh, well, I thought it would stop for everyone, but no, it depends on which side of the planet you're on. Where is the sun shining? So yeah, if the sun doesn't move, that means you're not moving, because the reason we see the sun moving is because the Earth spins, right? That's big. This is when a lot of people say, oh, well, that means, everything dies. The Earth it's all over. If you believe that we exist, that everything is real. But every ancient culture says it's all an illusion. It's an illusion. It's a movie.
And we talked about this in our very first episode when we talked about perception of reality. What is solid? What is matter?
What is matter and what isn't? And they talk about, and I can say this for a fact in ancient Egypt, but I've seen it in other cultures. We move through form and formless realities. We exist as formless beings, able to present through perception in any form we want to. And then we shapeshift, and then we fall into form fully. And then we shapeshift back into the formless, and it's an interesting dynamic. It's 4 seasons of the great year. If somebody's just tuning in to see us, and see just this episode, they're going to think we're talking nonsense. What is she saying? You got to go back through all the other episodes. It's there and it makes sense. There are so many different areas of expertise that talk about how this can happen through waveform, through, these are the cycles. It can't be any other way. That's what resurrection is all about. It's a reversal from what once was. You're coming out of the tomb. So yeah, the disaster unfolding, changes on planets, stars, and the sun, starting in 1859 till now. So we're talking about 170, 180 years, give or take. Solar kill shot, technological, in the 2020s, 2030s. This is what different people, not just Ben, are forecasting. Weather, animals, the solar red and black, solar micronova event.
What does that mean, the solar red and black?
I believe it's when the sun turns red and then the sun turns black. And I don't know the background to that, but these are all, he's talking about how things may begin to unfold, the things we can look for. Solar micronova event, shell impact, arc discharge, like plasma and things emanating from the sun. I'm not an expert on this, folks. I've studied it, but I'm not an astrophysicist. Whole planet electrical insult. And that would be probably like a super flare, big solar flare hitting us with, this reduced magnetic field, and literally knocking out our electrical grids, our internet, everything. And that sounds like, oh, well, not a big deal. If it wipes it out, it would take years to get us back up and running. That's big. Earth turns over, impactors cold. Yeah, just little things. And again, I don't want to go every little thing. You can look this up if you're interested. And I hope you are. I think it's so important. So what do you do with this knowledge? You do what the ancients did. Be a survivor. Somebody actually wrote this in the thread. Be a survivor. Pass on the knowledge. Start new stories of magnetic pole flip for your descendants 12,000 years from now.
Well, that's a very good point. We are all, you and I and every one of the billions of people on this planet, descendants of the people who survived the previous cataclysm.
Exactly. Cataclysm.
Physically.
Cataclysms. Because there is the 12,000-year cycle, and there is a 6,000-year cycle. The most difficult ones are the 12,000-year cycles. 6,000-year ones are intense. 6,000 years was Noah's flood, as it's been talked about in different places on the world. And then there's every 3,000-year event, every 1,500-year events. Before I even heard of Ben Davidson, I knew that was happening. And I started to type again in Google and different search engines. I was looking for the different cycles of cataclysms. So I mapped them out. And I found it was doing just that. And then it dawned on me, of course it was, because it can't be any other way. This is how we exist. It's a fractal world and fractal patterns. And those patterns are cycles. Everything is cyclical. We know that. Our lives are totally cyclical. We have
and we know what time it is in the great year by looking at the stars. We can tell the time in this cataclysm cycle just by looking at the sky like it's a giant clock.
Exactly. And we talked about that in a couple episodes too, how if you look at the circumpolar stars, we have, we're basically pointing at the Earth, right? And its tilt is pointing toward Polaris. We call this our North Star. And we emerged literally 180 degrees away. Where we came from was Vega. So on the other side of the circumpolar stars, that was 12,000 years ago, give or take. Okay, wow, folks. So there we have it. We went from Vega, our highest stage of consciousness, and we have literally moved, processed to basically our lowest point of polarity, right?
Do you think it's a coincidence that when we were at our highest state of consciousness, we were pointing at our largest star in the visible sky?
Of course. Of course. I have some interesting ideas about even where the South Pole was pointing, and possibly at Sirius, the Sophia, divine wisdom, because of things I've seen at Dendera. This is what Isis represents. Isis is the matriarchal spin, and Osiris is the patriarchal, and Isis is Sirius. And there's just many different pointers, many possibilities. We don't say anything is fact, but we're offering food for thought and encouraging and challenging everyone to connect their own dots, do their own research. And if you come up with something that we haven't seen, please write to us, please comment, make this a conversation. Because we all, this is important for all of us. And again, I think this is why so many of us are passionate about talking about it, because, that's how you grow the knowledge. We do want to put on the rose-colored glasses. We don't want to, we just want to get back to living the life. But I think even the pandemic showed us that, we have the scars from just this pandemic that was only 4 years, began 4 years ago, lasted a while. But we have the scars from what we all went through, however you view it and see it. Every one of us may see it differently, but they've become our wounds, and so have all these past cataclysmic events. They're there. We feel it in our blood. We feel it in our body. It's in our DNA. We know these events happen, and we're all feeling something now. Everyone I talk to, maybe not everyone, but a lot of us are feeling something's happening. And we've talked about this. He is the ecliptic pole. He is the big eye, the cat's eye nebula. And we see this wonderful image where, basically Ra in his many different expressions is the cat. Ra is the sun, the cat that cuts off the head of the pattern, right? And the pattern is the sine wave. The waveform stops for a moment of silence. He says, I am the cat which fought near the persea tree in Heliopolis, on the night when the foes of Nebuchadnezzar, lord to the uppermost limit, were destroyed. This male cat is Ra himself, and he was called Mao cats, right? Ancient Egyptian cats, they got Mao from meow. That was their name for cat. And he was called Mao because of the speech of the netter Sa, who said concerning him, he is like Mao, unto which he hath made. Therefore, did the name of Ra become Mao? That's from Budge. Budge further states that he has killed Apophis, or Apep, the prince of darkness, who had taken the form of a monster serpent. Apep or Apophis was the netter who embodied chaos and was thus the opponent of light and Ma'at, balance. This monster serpent is the same serpent who is said to have tempted Eve. It is the sine or spin wave that marks the life cycles with its peaks and nadirs related to our knowledge of good and evil. It is the duality that must exist if we are to vibrate as, breathe as living beings. Mao cuts off the head of these eternal cycles, bringing everything back to a moment of silence. And if it is the darkness, that means in that moment of silence, we see the light. That's complete gnosis. So here we see the image of the raising of the Jed. That's that moment. And when this individual on the left in the white black and white diagram raises or pulls that Jed pillar. Now they say he could be pushing or pulling it, but if he were to raise it, it's under the winged sun disk with the wings down. So that's the moment, that's the place. There's the X with the circle around it. It's the place when the magnetic field comes down and we have a moment of silence. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. And we just Allan experienced in Texas the amazing full solar eclipse over Texas. And I remember you said it was like the best one you'd ever seen. And so many people said that. The pictures were amazing. I was in Egypt. But I saw this and I thought it's really interesting with all the things we've been talking about. Bees don't buzz during an eclipse. Using tiny microphones suspended among flowers, researchers recorded the buzzing of bees during the 2017 North American eclipse, the last one. The bees were active and noisy right up to the last moments before totality. And as totality hit, the bees all went silent in unison. Isn't that incredible? Now we know the birds and we've heard about how, wildlife itself stops. But the buzzing of bees, that tone, it's so important on many different levels. They say that the buzzing of bees is the tone that helps to create the pentagon shape of the beehive. It's
the hexagon, you mean?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Did I say pentagon? Thank you, Allan. The hexagon shape, and that's Ninth, remember? Ninth is the queen bee. Who basically controls the, her population of the worker bees through the magnetic field, through this ability to harness it. She is the queen bee. She is the one that weaves, our time-space continuum into being. And when the earth, when the sun is silent and the earth stands still and the Jed pillar is raised to point at the Cat's Eye Nebula, there is the moment of silence, and there is no creation. There is no nothing. The bees are silent. Wow. I know, it's the little things that really make me excited. And then I saw this diagram too from the Popa view, and you can see, and again, these symbols of digestion of form and creation. You see the crocodile, he's descending. And you see on the other side, the jet is basically being erected with the Horus, the bird on top. And you see what I'm saying? It's everywhere in the world, this understanding. Night and day cycles, underworld and heaven, form and formless realities. And it says it's the Milky Way is the crocodile tree in the blowgun episode of the Popa View. Fascinating.
I'm glad you keep pointing these out, because we're focusing mainly on ancient Egypt, but this same dynamic is expressed in every mythology, in every culture all over the world. It's ubiquitous.
Well, this is what has blown me away with all my travels, all the different places I've been in the world, and I see the same thing everywhere. And that's when I knew I could literally speak with confidence, yakini, about all of the things that I had been working on all these years. This is why Allan and I, why we're doing these podcasts, because I am confident of what I'm talking about. It is everywhere. And it wasn't just Egypt, and it's different time periods. Yes, knowledge is spread, but I think it's a knowing. It's a knowing that we all had. It's in our DNA. Yeah. So for those who don't know, the Pulp of You is a foundational sacred narrative of the Kaichi.
The Quiche Maya. The Quiche
Thank
Maya.
you, Quiche, of course. I knew it. And all right, thank you. That's why, Allan, I need you here. From long before the Spanish conquest of the Maya, it includes the Mayan creation myth. So again, this is what we're trying to say. This is the same knowing. And then I had to point this out, because this same concept of the crocodile canoe, that crocodile, this image, you can see the one it's at the temple of Philae. It's the temple of Isis. And it's it's always intrigued me from the very first moment I saw it. And I have so many pictures of it. It's ridiculous. I just love the image. And it turns out it's hard to see what it is. But I found this wonderful pen and ink drawing several years back. And you can see that it's the crocodile, digestion of form, is pulling Osiris, on the bottom, that's moving into the formless. This is taking the body to be resurrected. And then on the top, you see Osiris sitting on the throne. And this is basically the day cycle. It's the other side. And there is Isis, and Horus is the child being born, the resurrection. These are cycles that repeat over and over and over again. And the same images, crocodile boat, crocodile canoe, across the Milky Way. In the heavens, in the stars, as above, so below. It's the circle of life. And here, again, they have these roads are sometimes imagined as canoe routes. About 3 hours after midnight, Linda Shelley identifies the visible portion of the Milky Way with the cosmic canoe, illustrated in classic Mayan art that conveys the maze god through the underworld to the place where he will be resurrected, the hearth of creation in Orion. I don't make this stuff up. It's here. I know I keep saying that, but I know people think, well, here the sky of the new era will be raised. Later, as the Milky Way begins to turn upright again, the canoe appears to sink. Isn't this incredible? Isn't that just mind-blowing? I love this stuff. So here's another image, and it's purification. See, that's basically the new pot, which is Newt. And he's pouring, they call it the seven rivers. He's pouring the sacred water. Remember the seven? We had a whole episode that discussed the seven, major highest qualities of energy. We have the seven seas and the seven land masses, continents, and the seven chakras. Seven is our number. It's part of our creation.
Right. Colors, tones, music notes.
Exactly. And so all of these things that created our container are coming out as the seven rivers. And it's eggshell. How would you pronounce that, Alan?
I don't even.
Okay.
I'm not even going to try to pronounce
that. I'll take the Lady Rainbow. And of course, the waters would be feminine, was the old moon goddess in Mayan mythology. The Maya people lived around 250 AD in what is now Guatemala and the Yucatan in Mexico. The Mayans are associated with human events with phases of the moon. Ixchel was depicted as an old woman wearing a skirt with crossed bones, and she had a serpent in her hand. She had an assistant sky serpent whom they believed carried all of the waters of the heavens in its belly.
And there you Aquarius?
Well, the waters are released, it could be related to Aquarius. We know that Lakshmi also will release, sometimes it's treasure from the container. So, we have this happening, in many different cycles, but especially these big cycles, I think, are represented by these symbols that we see everywhere. And here you can see she is that serpent in the sky. Is this related to Draco? This is the circumpolar spin. This is what they're talking about. Like you just said, what time is it? Is it time for the waters to be contained or to be released from the container? Form and formless realities. So I'm going to do a whole podcast, and not too far off, we're going to talk about water. And I just did a podcast with a really good friend on the primordial water. And I think, I wanted to show you the new jar. This is the new pot. And it was the symbol of the divine feminine womb as the vessel which receives the seed and releases it, in the purification. Nu and Nu was the symbol for the celestial waters, as the netter Nu, and his female counterpart was Nut. And Ascot, in Nubians called water Ascot, and Ascot Nefer was the harmony of water. And Hakim talked about this a lot. That particular name, Ascot, came from the Nubian language. It's still spoken today. And it's a language that no one on earth, hello, Jasper, no one on earth speaks, which is just, it's just, it's a lot of their words and a lot of their beliefs and language in who they are stems from ancient Egypt. It's really fantastic. But Ascot, water, represented the origin of all forms of water: rivers, lakes, seas, oceans, saliva, lava, blood, amniotic fluid, lymph, plasma, light, all currency, both subtle and electromagnetic. This is water. And the last two podcasts, we talked about the intelligence of water. And again, it's within all these waters. It's in our tears. It's in our bodies. It's outside our bodies. And it's intelligent. We talked about this. And this is what we're going to go forward and talk about, how this all plays in the events that could possibly be about to happen. And they had this term, and it was called Ascot Nefer, and it represented the innate balance of the ebb and flow as the game board for existence. Ebb and flow, the breath in and out, Ascot Nefer. There is a harmony to this. It's supposed to be this way, and it can't be any other way. So here's Ixchel again. I know I'm just saying that wrong. Maybe not, but she is a jaguar goddess from, the feline again, form from the ancient Mayan culture. She is known as both an earth and moon goddess. Her influence covers weavers, there's knife, medicine, pregnant women, labor, and midwifery. In her role as a fertility goddess, she ensures fertility by overturning her sacred womb jar, the new pot, so that the waters would flow. In this guise, she is often known as the Lady Rainbow, sending rain to the crops. And again, that whole idea of Tefnut being the water that ebbs and flows. She is the lioness. She's also known to be the keeper of the souls of the dead. Interesting. In India, she's Parvati or Durga, and we've talked more about Durga, but yeah. And here's Sefchet with those seven, the seven different aspects of that, the seven rivers, the seven, the rainbow, the chakras. She is the one that is responsible for all the sacred geometry that is formed as we fall into form. But let's get back to the topic at hand, catastrophe. So here is a nice big image of the how our pole is they call this the North Pole of the excursion, and how fast it's moving. So you can see where it was in 1900, and it's already moved. I think it's over. Is it Russia now? And this is only up to 2020, and it's still moving. And you see that red dot on the far right? That's where Ben says, he says that the two poles, the northern magnetic pole and the southern magnetic pole, are gravitating towards that point. And they now have, I saw a podcast where he showed that they now have, how they put those devices in the sea and the ocean to detect anomalies, weather changes and things. Well, he says they have a bunch of them there, and, there's stuff happening. So, poles are moving rapidly towards each other. This is all happening now. And so these are these, here you can see like the catastrophic events that happen every 6,000 years. And you can read through them, but these have happened. These things are happening. They may not be global events as far as total destruction, but they're cataclysmic events like Noah's floods happening in different places. And each one, brings with it different events like volcanoes and, increased volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, and all of these things happening at once. And, probably all, part of this electromagnetic, cycles, this intakes and outtakes of breath within cycles and within cycles. So yeah, here again, and he brings it down. He says the 12,000 year cycle, the micronova cycle, and a micronova. You're going to have to do some research on this. We have more knowledge out there. We've heard more about supernovas and how different stars have gone supernova, and how they affect the planets in their vicinity, and star seeding even. That we know that different events like a supernova in the Pleiades, how it affected the Earth and caused, an explosion of life in like 69 million years ago or something, 60, I don't know. I didn't do the research before this, but, we've talked about these things in other podcasts. And, here we have the 12,000 year micronova. Micronova isn't like a supernova. We've discovered, and Ben talks about this, they've discovered, not me, that a lot of the stars, if not all, have different micronova cycles. Some are more frequent than others, some are longer than others, but we've actually, they've actually discovered that many are, and there's no reason why our sun wouldn't either. And then the 6,000-year cycles, he talks about Heinrich Bond cycle. 3,000-year cycles, the mega flare cycle. 2,000-year cycles, the Hallstatt cycle. And these are all give or take a few years. It's not completely like clockwork, and it depends on where we're at in the spin and within the galaxy, and within all the other planets. But it's within, a very close range of those, those numbers. There's a 400-year cycle, which is a grand minimum cycle. We talk about the flares and how the sun goes through maximums and minimums. And then we have a super flare cycle that happens within 200 years. And in the next podcast, we're going to talk about the Carrington event that happened, I believe, in the 1860s. Or was it? Yeah, I think it was. And then we also have the 11-year sunspot cycle. The 11 years, every 11 years, give or take, the sun flips its poles. The sun actually literally has a pole reversal. And this is what I call, when we have a pole reversal, it flips one way and then the other way for a full cycle of 22 years. And that number is really important, which I'll talk about in a moment. But we have, again, super flare cycles, climate cycles. Check these things out. They are documented. Again, you're not going to see this in your textbooks, in general school, public school textbooks. You're not going to see it on the news, but these things have happened and continue to happen throughout Earth's history. So how many people have noticed the 1111, that people have been talking about it for at least 20 years or more. The 1111, we all started to see it, all of a sudden we look at the clock and it's 1111. The number is important. And as I just said, these are the sun cycles. And I think it's related to the sun cycles. This is why that number is important. It's embedded in our DNA. It's a memory that this is a smaller cycle and a greater cycle. And again, you can see at the bottom, it's kind of fuzzy, but you can see that these pole reversals happen about every 22 years, like clockwork. 1111. And it affects the Earth, of course. These cause the different cycles. Well, here you have it. 1111 completes a full cycle of 22. There are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The letters are neither independent substances nor yet as mere forms. They seem to be the connecting link between essence and form. This comes from Isidore Singer, who was an encyclopedist. And we have 22 major arcana in the tarot deck, 22 stages or steps on the hero's journey brought forward to us from Joseph Campbell. But the hero's journey exists in mythologies again worldwide. And we've talked about it in terms of Osiris. He is the fool in the tarot deck, and he begins his journey. He falls into form and he's raring to go, and then boom. He's on the sine wave pattern of cycles within cycles within cycles. 1111. From Mitch Batros, from Science of the Cycles, News and Research. I'm not sure he's doing that as much as he was before, but I remember, staying updated with the things he was talking about. This is from 2019, 5 years ago. He says, what creates Earth's magnetic field is the process through which a rotating, convecting, and electrically conducting fluid, which makes up the geodynamo mechanism. Recent studies indicate that a slow-flowing solid mantle and its reciprocal connection with the hot, fast-flowing outer core is the central focus of Earth's magnetic field weakening. As a result of a weakened magnetic field, coupled with a deep solar minimum, is allowing an alarming amount of galactic cosmic rays to enter our planet's environment. Additionally, a major consequence of a weakened magnetic field, in conjunction with an inundation of space radiation, allows for the yeah, exactly. Allows for the redistribution of gas and fluids, which could contribute to Earth's tilt and wobble. Wow. See, it's all coming together. It's being woven nicely into the story of how the Earth moves.
Mm.
So he goes on to say, my research suggests radiation produced by GCRs has a significant influence on Earth's core by increasing temperatures. In viewing Earth as a living entity, a natural reaction to overheating would be to find a way to cool down. And that's exactly what Earth does. Exactly. When our planet becomes overheated, it sweats.
Sorry.
Like us humans, when we get overheated, we sweat through our pores. When the Earth becomes overheated, it sweats through its pores called mantle plumes.
Wow. Volcanoes.
We're bringing it home here, Alan. This is just mind-boggling. So what's the 12-12? There was a lot more talk about it about 10 years ago, but people were also seeing the 12-12. I think this has to do with the 12,000-year cycle. As a result of a weakened magnetic field coupled with a deep solar minimum is allowing an alarming amount of galactic cosmic rays to enter our planet's environment. In a paper published in the journal American Geophysical Union, Space Weather, Associate Professor Nathan Schwadron of the University of New Hampshire Institute for the Study of Earth, Oceans, and Space, and the Department of Physics says that due to this solar cycle's vast drop in solar activity, a stream of cosmic ray particles are flooding Earth's atmosphere and further driving in through the Earth's core, plasma. Additionally, a major consequence of a weakened magnetic field in conjunction with an inundation of space radiation allows for the redistribution of gas and fluids, which could contribute to Earth's tilt and wobble. We said this, it is this reaction, which could affect the convection process, allowing for the north-south magnetic field lines to bounce around the northern latitudes. This is known as a geomagnetic excursion. And that was the diagram I showed you a few slides back, where the North Pole, the North Magnetic Pole, has moved so much over the last century, and moving much faster, exponentially faster now. The 12-12. I like to bring this up. That little image in the bottom right-hand corner shows how precession actually works. And it's basically a sine wave pattern because we wobble. So that waveform is the nutation as we precess through the circumpolar stars. And, again, we've talked about that so many times, but here is the symbolism in ancient Egypt. And you see the Kepler beetle, who is a symbol of this journey, right? He's the one who earns his wings. He's like Osiris on the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is around the circumpolar stars. Isn't that beautiful? So let's get to that plasma. Rudolf Steiner talks about, this from Rory Duff again. Rudolf Steiner talks about great cycles of consciousness where we move from group to individual and back to group consciousness, separation consciousness, unity consciousness. Now this now seems related to the times we transition through the galactic current sheet and the increased levels of cosmic energy. Nature seems to offer us this opportunity to evolve our consciousness after we have explored and overcome the challenges we face in our world during the state of individual consciousness. It's all related. And when we talk about this plasma, it is a breath from the center of the galaxy, and it breathes out and it inhales back in every 12,000 years. Well, it hits our solar system in every 12,000 years. That's big. Again, it's all related. We're connecting the dots. This is the image I'm showing is the galactic current sheet. And I said it twice, cheat sheet. It emanates from the center of our galaxy. This is from Ben Davidson. And he believes this is what causes the micronova. And he says, likely before 2050. He's now ramping that up a little bit to be a lot faster and a lot sooner. And it's dust. It's plasma. This is space dust. Ways to make a nova: magnetic kick and material accumulation. The galactic sheet delivers both at the same time. So we get increased radiation and we get dust accumulating, and it hits our solar system and it causes all those anomalies to all the different planets. That it's happening right now. It's happened before and it'll happen again.
Now, when you're talking about dust, you're not talking about the kind of dust, that accumulates on your surfaces of your house.
It's plasma, it's space dust. They use the same terms. If you look up plasma, it basically says it's dust. And no, it's not exactly like the dust that we have hitting us. Just like it's space water, it's primordial water, and it's the water of the Nile. Different forms of the same expression of something. Water is anomalous, and plasma is water. It's a form of energy that flows, ebbs and flows. This is what causes the fluid dynamic ripple of plasma or galactic dust. So if you look at that diagram, above our galaxy, which is in the center, and you see where our sun is, and our galaxy spirals. So it's spiraling around between, above. The currents are going, the currents are spinning one way, and below they're spinning the opposite way. And so this same dynamic, where have we seen this before? Everywhere.
On the equator, the Borealis effect. Yeah.
This is why I'm pointing out these things, because it can't be any other way. This is the dynamic of energy. That's a torus field, right? That's the torus field of our galaxy. Ready to go down the rabbit hole? It's big. And like I said, we've got torus fields around every one of our inner suns, our spinning inner suns, our chakras. We have it around, our heart is emanating out and affecting everything in our environment. Everyone in our environment has torus fields, and everything that breathes on Earth breathes in torus. Everything is Atum. That's what Atum is. Whether it's the galaxy, the universe, the multiverse, or the Earth or the sun, everything is torus. The Semateli, one of the most ancient symbols of Egypt. Form and formless, the great yogic breath. Here, it's basically the lungs of the universe, or our galaxy rather. So, yeah, this is so incredible. So Ben points out this document, and I hate to read these things because they sound so over our heads. But he said that this was an important discovery that's highlighted in this paper. And like I said, he has these papers throughout all his podcasts. And he says the magnetic fields in our Milky Way can be revealed by the distribution of Faraday rotation measures of radio sources behind the galaxy and of radio pulsars inside the galaxy. Based on the anti-symmetry of the Faraday sky in the inner galaxy to the galactic coordinates, the magnetic field toroids above and below the galactic plane with reversed field directions exist in the galactic halo and have been included in almost all models for the global magnetic structure in the Milky Way. However, the quantitative parameters such as the field strength, the scale height, and the scale radius of the toroids are hard to determine from observational data. It has long been argued that the radio sources or rotation measures, anti-symmetry, could be dominated by local contributions of the interstellar medium. Here we discount the local rotation measures, contributions measured by pulsars mostly located within the 5 KPC, I'm not sure what that means, and get to the first quantitative estimate of the size of the magnetic toroids in the galactic halo. They are huge, starting from a galactocentric radius of less than 2 kilobits per, I don't know, to at least 15 without field direction reversals. Such magnetic toroids in the galactic halo should naturally constrain the physical processes in galaxies. I'm pointing out that, these cycles and these dynamics exist in everything, in our perception of reality. And once we understand what they mean, they tell us what's going to happen next. They tell us why it's happening. This is the marriage of science and spirituality. And this is what, we haven't been doing. We've been calling science science, and we've been calling spirituality. It's like two dual opposing forces of nature, and they're not. They are married. One describes the other. And what we think is supernatural, a lot of people think the spiritual is supernatural, but it's completely natural. And it can be defined through scientific principles. But that doesn't, it's as real as science. And this is what brings spirituality down to earth in an understandable way for many.
That's a good point you just made, that there is nothing supernatural. Everything is natural.
It's completely natural. And it is our existence. And, we want to wrap everything up in a little boxes. That's left brain mentality. We want to put labels on it, and we say it can only be this way. How many times have we discovered our science was faulty, and we had to write new theorems and new statements of fact, only for them to be discovered faulty? Because there's no way, and Akim said this over and over, there's no way to etch anything down and make it, that's the way it only is. Everything morphs and transforms and changes, including our perception of ourselves. So if we think we only live in a material world, we are missing the boat. Rudolf Steiner said it. If we are just wrapped up in what we can touch and feel with our 5 limited senses, we are not going to make it through the next event. But when we can wrap our heads around the fact that everything morphs and changes, including us, then all bets are off.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a part to play in the process. So we can't afford to be lazy, and we can't afford to sit back and wait and see what happens. We have to be an active participant in our own healing. How many times have you heard that?
Not very often. That's
Well, I say it a lot. The ancients, in the places where they utilized healing, I talk about Sakkara a lot. They you can have a spontaneous healing, but if you don't participate, if you don't work on the things that created the imbalance within, it will come back. It'll show itself in spades. Because we are active participants in creating our own reality. We are co-creators. And
but we're encouraged by everything to be passive, to not recognize our power of creation.
Sit back and believe the science. Sit back. Well, the science isn't always right.
Trust the authorities.
Trust, yeah. And I don't know that the authorities know. Are the people posing as the authorities? Whatever is happening in this world, we don't sit back and trust. We need to awaken, and participate in our own awakening. We don't want someone to give us rituals and tell us, we are a priestess of Isis, and suddenly we are going to change the world, and we don't even know what we've said or done. 5 spaces forward and 6 spaces backwards, and turn around and raise your arms to the sun. It's a beautiful thing, but it was meant for a different time and place. And now we are awakening, and we have to participate. We have to know. We need to create our own rituals to bring ourselves back to center, dependent on where we're out of balance. Not somebody else, not some other culture, not some other state of consciousness. We need to bring ourselves back into balance. But enough, in my opinion. But anyway, this plasma, this dust, is the cause of the great disaster cycle. That's a biggie. It's the one that's going to create everything that we've been talking about. And John Major Jenkins once said, unfortunately he's passed, the Mayans tell us that in 2012, a serpent rope is going to emerge from the center of our Milky Way galaxy, out of which will step a bearded god of enlightenment. And that serpent rope is what we're talking about, in my opinion, again. And when he said a bearded god of enlightenment, all I could think of is Ptah. From out of the blue, he emerges. I'm just using him to show you the bearded style of the netters, and how that can be related as something different. This emergence from a state of form, or digestion out of form when it's a breath. So this was posted on Dan Winter's website, and I find him just incredible. He's got a mind that it's hard to keep up with. He makes my head hurt more often than not. But he gets this from Paul Laviolette's book, Earth Under Fire, as it was extensively quoted in Vincent Bridges and Jay Widener's book, The Mystery of the Great Cross at Hendaye. And it says 1 in 5 galaxies are Seyfert type, which means they shoot a fire of great power out from their core spiral periodically. Astronomers have come to realize that galactic core explosions occur in all spiral galaxies, even our own, and that the majority of galaxies that have a normal appearance with no sign of core activity are simply galaxies whose core happens to be in their quiescent phase. The statistics suggest that a galaxy core resides in this quiescent phase about 80 to 85% of the time. It spends the other 15 to 20% of the time in an active state, with erupted episodes lasting from hundreds to several thousands of years. In this sense, galaxies go on and off like the blinking lights of a Christmas tree. Wow. The book then cites rather extensive astronomic evidence for recent galactic core eruptions in our own galaxy. So again, cyclical, different words to describe it, but I believe it's speaking to the exact same thing. And different ways of perceiving just relate to where we're at in any given moment. We're all out there just, putting our theories forward, and these things have been coming up for years, hundreds, if not thousands, well, obviously thousands of years. But this is what we're uncovering: mankind's understanding of these events through metaphor, through mythology and symbolism and dogma, and in the things we rely on, either for entertainment or even for as a religion, are including incredible information about these cycles and these events. And sometimes we read it at face value and we miss the depth. And as I've said many times, the symbolism in Egypt, 7 levels of meaning. Every symbol, every at least 7 levels, but definitely 7. In every symbol, every tone, everything has different levels of meaning. At its highest state of consciousness, I think they were giving us the best knowing to prepare us for these moments in time.
Just as a little aside, if you go back, I heard an interview by Jay Widener before where he talks about the cross of Hendaye, and it's a monument in the south of France, and depicted on it you have the sun, and then on the other side you have an angry sun, as if the sun is exploding, a supernova. They're depicting what happens, and somehow he decoded that the builders of the monument were saying that the place that the people survived the previous cataclysm was Cusco. which of course is high in the Andes, very close to Machu Picchu.
Oh, and it has some, Cusco is an amazing town. I went with Brian Forrester twice, and it is incredible what they have there. But thank you for bringing that up, Alan. You know, I never know how long to go with these, but I have always been intrigued by this cross of Hendaye. And like you just said it, you know, the beautiful sun on one side and the angry sun on the other. And, you know, it's talking about what we're talking about. It can be perceived that way. Again, I can't say as fact, but other people are believing the same thing. And again, it's big. We don't want to put our heads in the sand. And this from Dan Winter too, we would have to say the stimulating conclusion is that we are about to be blasted from the galactic core in a way that synchronizes our well-predicted sun burp. And he believes it started, you know, with the solar maxima and, you know, from 2000 to 2012, which he calls the rapture, to the galactic alignment of the 3 superimposed rotations, which triggers it. 3-body problem? Yeah, that 3 is quite interesting. And I'm not going to go into any detail with this, but just interesting things that you can play with or look up or research if you are interested in the things Allan and I are talking about. And here he shows this diagram, and he says, this is remarkably similar in language to Nick Fiorenza's work astronomically and astrologically, describing the upcoming nutation precession, which sees the galactic equator, the solar equator, and Earth equator approach the 90-degree relation, the erection of the Holy Cross, triggering the end of our age. In summary, all predictions, astronomic, astrologic, Mayan, Hendaye, etc., agree the rapidly approaching end of our age is, he calls it deadly. And again, it's deadly if you think that this is not an illusion, that you think it's real.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to peek our heads up and get out of the cave.
How about transformational?
Yeah, I like that. And that's what, you know, that's what it is, metamorphosis. That, you know, Osiris becomes the bird, the hawk, the eagle, different types of birds worldwide. You see them at the top of totem poles, usually eagles, depending on, you know, the country or the village or the, you know, the culture. But yeah, it's the same dynamic. So the dust in interplanetary space between the planets is increasing. This comes from the Planetary Science Journal in 2021. We know it's increasing. There is an increasing amount of dust in the sun's corona. This is 2021. There is an increasing amount of dust in the uppermost F corona of the sun, causing an increase of its radiance or brightness. A lot of people have been talking about the sun is changing. You know, it's brighter than it used to be. People are noticing, you know, the subtle changes in our environment. And yeah, this could be explaining why. So I love to bring these up. These two, they're basically all based on the book by Philip Pullman called His Dark Materials. Many of you might have seen The Golden Compass, which I fell in love with. That was a movie. It was introduced several years ago. And it kind of blew me away. And it talks about dust as the conduit to interdimensional travel and higher realms. Well, there's a new way to look at things, right? His Dark Materials, this was the book. It's an introduction, I'm sorry, by Philip Pullman. It was written by Marion John Gribben. But this was a TV series that was also created based on this book. And both of them are phenomenal if you take the time to watch them. There's a lot of clues to what's happening right now within both of these movie and, well, the book and the TV series. But the series is based on Philip Pullman's popular novels. So I think people are saying it's him and not, but whatever, because I took this from the same literature. But the series is based on Philip Pullman's popular novels that follow a young girl's journey of self-discovery and harnessing the magic within her. The first season of this dark material served as an adaptation of Philip Pullman's classic novel, The Golden Compass, aka Northern Lights. The 8 episodes followed by Lyra and her daemon, Pantalaimon, as they ventured from Oxford to the Arctic in search of her friend Roger, and includes answers about the mysterious dust. It's really exceptional. This is Lord Asriel in the Arctic taking some very dangerous photos. This is her father, who is up at the North Pole. You can see the northern lights behind him, the aurora borealis, and the tiger, right? The feline, because he's the one who knows currency. And he's studying the dust. And wow. Here you can see dust. The daemon are, they're like, they're kind of like a totem. They're like everybody in this world. And when they get to the TV series, they show that there's different dimensions, different realities happening all at the same time. It really is exceptional. So they've learned how through portals to go between the different levels of reality all happening at the same time and meet different perceptions of reality in them, which is, again, all of this is great, you know, if you have the opportunity to look any of these up. But the daemon is sort of like the totem, but the daemon is some form of animal, which at a certain time in your early childhood, it holds. So it can morph into different animals until, you know, your personality makes one actually stay with you. And in the story, there's this evil female, which I don't want to give away all the details, but she wants to take away the power from the children by removing their daemons. And you know, there's a lot involved, and I certainly don't want to, you know, maybe one day we can do something on this particular podcast about what's behind everything in these film and series. But here you see, again, the dust is being pulled from a daemon. So it relates to our soul, ourself, it's...
Well, yeah, it sounds like how you've talked before about the first time a child hears that they're going to die. It's almost like you're killing their imagination, or you're killing
Exactly.
their belief that they are more than that.
Yeah, and your little friend, but in this case, it is, you know, whether you're an adult in these different stories or a child, if you die, your dust leaves. It's like your soul leaving the body, but it's also a separate thing from you. So it's just such an interesting dynamic. And this is, like I said, in one dimension of reality. So the term dust comes from an alternate reality biblical passage in Lyra's world. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. That's Genesis 3:19. And the idea is that dust is a universal part of human existence, as inescapable as death, and perhaps intrinsically linked to it. This comes from the website inverse.com. Goes on to say, Will Parry, Lyra's faithful partner in magic, possesses the subtle knife that can slice open pathways to other realms in this world, the other dimensions. Dust is seemingly different. Will's world operates more like our real world. He doesn't have a daemon following him around. It's there, but we can't see it. Aha, so we do have a daemon. Or is that our higher self, right? Dust is represented as dark matter and shadows that are researched by the Dark Matter Research Unit at Oxford University. And this is in the story. Astrophysicist Mary Malone did extensive research on how dark matter and shadows affected human consciousness, and she was driven to discover what it was. But after so much time, hope seemed lost. In this more technological world, Mary used a computer program called The Cave to communicate with the dust. And with Lyra's help, answers come through. She learns that dust is made up of angels and that she's meant to play the serpent in Lyra's story. This makes your head spin, doesn't it?
It's a lot to unpack there.
Well, exactly.
Her name is Mary.
Yeah. You have to see it. I would just stop it, reverse it, go back again. It's like, did I just hear that? Oh my God. It just blew me away. I'll probably watch the whole series again because there's so much in it. So the magisterium, that's the authority, regards dust as a sign of original sin. Of course. Think about this. This is so well done, but it's perhaps more accurate for us to compare it to the Force in Star Wars, a mystical energy attracted to sentient life that is itself conscious. Now, all the things we've been talking about. Dust was created when consciousness first evolved into existence. Dust is particularly attracted to anything with or created by consciousness, including objects created by people and actual people. Interesting. Oh, objects and the people. It gathers in greater concentration around a matured consciousness, such as any person in Lyra's world after their daemon assumes its final form. But it's also what generates the powerful connection between a child and their daemon. In similar terms, anything that seems remotely spiritual or magical is connected to dust, including Lyra's alethiometer. It's a magic compass. That's the golden compass. The titular golden compass that lends its name to the first book in the trilogy. Dust permeates everything in the universe and existed before we individuals did and will continue after us. Dust enriches us and is nurtured in turn by us. It brings us wisdom, and it is kept alive by love and curiosity and diligent inquiry and kindness and patience and hope. The relationship we have with dust is mutually beneficial. Instead of being the dependent children of an all-powerful king, we are partners and equals with dust in the great project of keeping the universe alive. It's time to go home. It's basically coming and bringing us back to center. It is intelligent. It's plasma, and it's communicating with us, and it's waking us up. We need to participate in our own healing, our own awakening. So dust is many things all at once, but throughout the many worlds, it's a powerful force that represents the essence of the internal world. And when one harnesses it, one can become extraordinarily powerful. Harnessing the currents.
Riding the mare.
Riding the mare. It's all the same things that the ancients said. So from Sir William Crookes on radiant matter, in studying this fourth state of matter, we seem at length to have within our grasp and obedient to our control the little indivisible particles, which with good warrant are supposed to constitute the physical basis of the universe. We have seen that in some of its properties, radiant matter is as material as this table, whilst in other properties it almost assumes the character of radiant energy. We have actually touched the borderland where matter and force seem to merge into one another, the shadowy realm between the known and the unknown, which for me has always had peculiar temptations. I venture to think that the greatest scientific problem of the future will find their solution in this borderland and even beyond. It seems to me that the ultimate reality is subtle, far-reaching, and wonderful. His theories were confirmed by the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th, when it was discovered that what Crookes observed was a flow of electrons in a medium containing plasma, the fourth state of matter. It is now known that 99.9% of the matter in the universe is dust. So every 12,000 years, give or take, like clockwork, this from Rory Duff. Every 8 to 10 days, our Earth passes through the sun's current sheet. It takes 2 minutes to pass through, and our Earth gets a measurable jolt of electricity when we do. And he sees this in he measures this in the Earth currents. This is happening. Our solar system passes through our galaxy's current sheet roughly every 12,000 years. It takes around 200 years to travel through, and the Earth gets an even bigger jolt of electricity. You can imagine, right? The effects of the proximity of this current sheet are being experienced now. One of these effects is that our Earth's magnetic field strength is reducing. Magnetic north is now moving much faster towards the Russian coast. The southern magnetic polar region has already left Antarctica. This reduction in our magnetic field is affecting all life on Earth. Plasma is the spit of Newt, Aztec Newt, and the conduit back to our center. I love my little feline lion on the surfboard. That's on the far left. I have a bit of a sense of humor with this. The golden compass is on the right. This is what Lyra is able to spin, and it tells her what's going to happen and what's happening around her. It's her clock. It's her compass, right?
Lyra also is one of the constellations that makes up the circumpolar, or the polar circle.
Yeah, where Vega is.
Right.
Lyra, she represents the golden age. So she gets the golden compass as much as her mother wants to take it. So thank you for pointing that out. I get so wrapped up in this what I want to, what's happening, that I forget. That's so beautiful. So yeah, from Ecclesiastes. All go to the same place, all come from dust, and to dust all return. It can't be any other way, right? We are the Neteru. We all have a unique frequency as forces of nature. What does the daemon represent? Your divinely inspired conscience. It's knowing what kind of person you are. Take old Belissaria, her daemon. She's a seagull, and that means I'm a kind of like a seagull too. I'm not grand and splendid nor beautiful, but I'm a tough old thing, and I can survive anywhere and always find a bit of food and company. That's worth knowing, that is. And when your daemon settles, you'll know the sort of person you are. And of course, that's a quote from the Golden Compass, but it explains how it works. And we all have an archetypal energy, just like all of the netters are archetypal energies from center. And we are also angels of light from that same divine source. And we all breathe out and we breathe back together, along with our daemons, our other higher selves, our conscience, if you will, your soul, however you want to express it. The vibration of being you and doing what you love is magnetic. You will align everything you need in your life with that energy. Walk through this with awareness. It'll make all the difference in the world. The Earth is surrounded by cosmic plasma consisting of electrons, ions, and negatively charged dust particles. That's the dust. That's us. That's everything. It's consciousness. It's the hero's journey. Did you see that in that slide? It looks the same as what's happening. It's our neural network, right? Mm-hmm. It's all plasma. So the possible influence of cortical neuronal circuits on each other. Here's a model by Richard Montgomery. And he says the interaction between electromagnetic fields and biological systems is a complex and multifaceted subject that has intrigued scientists for decades. At the intersection of physics and biology, this interaction opens doors to a wide array of applications and insights, particularly in the realm of neuroscience. The human brain, a sophisticated network of neural circuits, communicates through electrical signals. Understanding how these signals can be influenced by electromagnetic fields is the subject of ongoing research. We are connected to the galactic plasma. There is an interaction happening. Everything in the universe, everything in our galaxy is having an effect on our physical, mental, and spiritual bodies and our conscious perception, meaning This could be the moment we fully awaken. Of course, that's what I've been saying all along.
Well, if
Plasma,
you think about, as you said before, our 3D reality is actually the night cycle. We're
yep,
actually asleep looking at the shadows on the wall of Plato's cave. So if we can wake up in this dream, then we can control it just like lucid dreaming when we're asleep. So we can really be lucid dreaming as we're awake in this 3D reality. And
that's how we bring it home. That's it. That's exactly it.
it's
Plasma, dust is conscious. Plasma, it's one of the four fundamental states of matter alongside solids, liquids, and gases. It's often described as an ionized gas because it consists of charged particles. I keep saying it because, in order to fully embrace and understand it, you need to hear it a few times.
mhm.
But this is it. It's the energy that's within us. It's the neural networks that make up our bodies. It's what connects the bodies in the universe that are rolling around the heavens, giving us that as above, so below context. It's this interchange, and it's conscious. And from the Resonance Science Foundation, plasma filaments, conscious plasma bodies. It's the bloodstream of our universe. They run through space, connecting all superclusters, forming a giant grid system, just like the neural pathways of our brain. It's a perfect fractal, scale invariant example of the distribution of consciousness among the universe. And so, hopefully, with everything we've set up till now, you have a vision that you can hold on to of the things that we've been talking about all along. These neurons take in many inputs from what we see and hear to how we feel to everything in between, and then send messages to other neurons, which react in turn. Working neural networks are what enable humans to think and, more importantly, learn. As a method of taking in large amounts of data, processing it, and making predictions and decisions based on the data, the human brain's neural networks are by far the most powerful computing force known to man. Well, today, so far. Um, Space dust, it's alive, and it is us. So again, driving the point home from Wired magazine that life should be carbon-based is a pretty dated assumption. This is Wired magazine. These days, the zeitgeist is all about sustained organization and patterns of energy flow. The right conditions are found in a plasma, that fourth state of matter beyond solid, liquid, and gas, in which electrons are torn from atoms, leaving behind a miasma of charged particles. In a computer model of inorganic particles in plasma, researchers from the Russian Academy of Science watched for extraterrestrial physics, watched plasma state inorganic dust organize itself, twisting into strands that look and act a bit like DNA. Now, I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but now you have a better understanding when we include what we said this time. So you see, dust can organize itself. It's creating. This is immaculate conception, right? This is virgin birth. Virgin birth is talked about in not just the Bible, but ancient Egypt, and many different mythologies worldwide. Immaculate conception through consciousness itself. That tells us how powerful we are.
Wow.
We are made up of plasma. We can create of and by ourselves. We just forgot how. It's our portal to the higher realms of perception. Nebulae in space, this is the Cat's Eye Nebula again, exist in the space between the stars, also known as interstellar space. Some of the universe's most visually stunning constructions are nebulae, clouds of gas and dust that can be the birthplace of stars, the scene of their demise, and sometimes both. Every end is a new beginning. Nebula are made up of gas, primarily hydrogen and helium, and fine cosmic dust. So what the Jed pillar is pulled up to is plasma.
Hmm.
Of course. It's our moment of complete gnosis. So this is wonderful. We're nearing the end, but this is a wonderful quote from the Pleiadians via I used to go see Barbara Marciniak when I lived in Albuquerque. She used to give yearly lectures in Sedona, and she was said to have channeled the Pleiadians. Now, again, realize the Pleiades don't exist. We don't exist. We believe it's the illusion of form, but the dust, the space dust, is conscious, and we can communicate with it. And some of her work was really groundbreaking. It so resonated with me. But she said cosmic rays are coming onto the planet so that a change is being broadcast. And this was years ago. This could have been in the 1990s. I mean, but I started reading her books at about that time. But she says cosmic rays are coming onto the planet so that a change is being broadcast and a reordering is taking place inside the body. The scattered data that holds the history and awareness of the Earth, the living library, is now lining up. The DNA is evolving. New helixes or strands are being formed as the light-encoded filaments are beginning to bundle themselves together. The scattered data is being pulled together in your body by electromagnetic energies from the Prime Creator. We are here to watch this process in you. Now, this is the Pleiadians being channeled through her. To assist you and to evolve ourselves as well. As this rebuilding or reordering comes together, you will create a more evolved nervous system that will allow much more data to move itself into your consciousness. You will awaken many brain cells that have been lying dormant, and you will come into the use of your full physical body rather than the small percentage that you have been functioning with.
It's exactly what we've been talking about for 36 episodes.
Exactly. So isn't this, this is, again, star seeding. This is not aliens coming down and playing with our DNA. This is an this is all space dust. We are all aliens.
We are the aliens.
We are the aliens. We've been everything that can be possibly imagined. And
so believe in yourself if you want to believe in something.
Exactly. Don't be waiting for an alien to come down and save you, because they're just other aspects of ourselves, however we perceive them. Just my opinion, folks, but and we can talk forever about it, but everything exists. And again, channeling, I have seen really good, clear channels. And I want to bring this up. I'm not endorsing, running out and listening to channelers. Barbara Marciniak is special. One of the best, anyway, I could go on and on. We are a human channel in form, and we are faulty. But sometimes the information, if it's not tampered with by our own perception, can come in much clearer. And, I'm not pushing, I'm not saying this is fact, but boy, when I read her books and when I see what was being said, it all resonated so clearly with me. And then to come to Egypt and find it written in the temples and on the walls. And, it's just mind-boggling. And like Allan just said, we transform. Every place on the planet is being affected by this change, this awareness. Those of you who are the guardians of light and who wished, this is still the Pleiadians, and who wish to completely change this present reality and bring different options in, are anchoring the frequency. If it's not anchored and understood, it can create chaos. It will create chaos. This is why you must ground yourselves. Chaos brings about a state of reorganization when utilized properly. Time is collapsing and the energy is becoming larger and larger. You have come here to use that energy first. You will make pathways of consciousness as you pull the energy into your body that will assist others so they may not have to go through what you go through. Many people will suddenly begin to feel this energy without any preparation at all. The new pathways of consciousness create new realities, new options, and new ways of living and being. It's a brand new day cycle, and we transform. We don't have to be afraid.
It's a metamorphosis.
It's a metamorphosis, exactly. I've talked about Veda Austin. She in the book, The Secret Intelligence of Water. I bring it up again because this is plasma. This is it, and it knows, and we can communicate with it. She is communicating with it. And this from Frank Zappa just seemed appropriate here. None of us have the promise of tomorrow, right? God forbid this is my last day on this beautiful earth. It won't be spent listening to some news person telling me how rotten we are, how rotten life is. Heck no. I'm going out and seeing how beautiful life is. As humans, our time on this planet is very limited. Turn off, tune out, and turn on your life. Peace. And here's what Veda Austin got when she put the picture of the dove under the water. She got a beautiful dove.
Unreal.
Right? Isn't it? She just has thousands of these things, and it's all mind-boggling. We are all recycled stardust. You know, how many people said that? Carl Sagan, and so many more. We are all recycled stardust. We are the dust. We are the plasma. And this is, I think, the last slide, and it's just beautiful. Open your minds to new adventures. You start dying slowly if you do not travel, if you do not read, if you do not listen to the sounds of life. If you do not appreciate yourself, you start dying slowly. When you kill your self-esteem, when you do not let others help you, you start dying slowly. If you become a slave of your habits, walking every day on the same paths, if you do not change your routine, if you do not wear different colors, or you do not speak to those you don't know, you start dying slowly. If you avoid to feel passion and their turbulent emotions, those which make your eyes glisten and your heart beats fast, you start dying slowly. If you do not risk what is safe for the uncertain, if you do not go after a dream, if you do not allow yourself at least once in your lifetime to run away from sensible advice, don't let yourself die slowly. Don't forget to be happy. Pablo Neruda. Yeah. Wow.
Thank you.
We're just getting started.
Just getting started.
Yeah. We'll stop. This was a long one, I think.
Well, you have tours coming up, and everybody can find information about your upcoming tours on our website, horusrising.com. And we will be back with another episode very shortly. We have so much more to cover. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Alan.